Two leaders, two visions, and one civilization torn apart. You can't think of this as a story between communism and democracy. It's about what happens when an empire collapses and brilliant minds clash over the soul of a nation. Most of what you think you know about China and Taiwan is propaganda. Today, we're going to use the tools of realpolitik to understand what actually happened and why it still matters. From empire to division, what happened in China after the Qing? Collapse and the chaos. In 1911, the Qing dynasty fell apart. Well, it shattered. The republic that emerged was immediately torn apart by warlords who taxed peasants into starvation while fighting over scraps of territory. Enter Sun Yat-sen and his Kuomintang, founded on three principles: nationalism, democracy, and the collective livelihood of the people. But these principles didn't win wars, and the Soviets knew this. They sent Comintern agents to reorganize the KMT in the early 1920s. From this chaos emerged a military genius. Chiang Kai-shek was trained in Japan and disciplined as steel. He unified China's warlords through the Northern Exhibition by 1928. But unifying China and controlling it are two very different things. The soldier of the Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek was born in 1887 in Zhejiang province. He wasn't a theorist or an ideologue. He was a disciplined soldier who understood his power. His first marriage to Mao Fumei was arranged and traditional. She then gave him a son, Chiang Ching-kuo, then died in a Japanese raid in 1939. His second wife changed everything. Sun Mei-ling was a Wellesley graduate, Christian, and politically brilliant. She was his wife, but she was also his bridge to the Western world. While Chiang fought wars, Mei-ling opened schools for war orphans and led women's relief programs. And in 1934, amid the brutality of the Civil War, Chiang built Mei-ling a mansion on Mount Lu Palace. He arranged imported pine trees to form a necklace pattern only visible from an airplane, a romantic gesture that could only be appreciated from the sky. Even in war, love finds a way. The Revolutionary of Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong, born in 1893 in Hunan, came from landowners but discovered something more powerful than that land: his ideas. Working in libraries, he found Marxist theory and saw how it could weaponize rural anger. His personal life was a series of tragedies that hardened his resolve. His first wife, Liu Yishu, died young. His second wife, Yang Kai-hu, was executed by the KMT in 1930. Then, Ji Zhen, and finally Jiang Qing in 1938, who would later disappear into political obscurity for 20 years. But Mao's genius wasn't from his understanding of theory. It was more so from his understanding of people. In Yan'an, he created something unprecedented: a revolutionary base built on support. While other communists focused on urban workers, Mao saw that China's revolution would come from the countryside. Part 4. When Empires Clash. August 1937. Japan invaded, and everything changed. The KMT took the conventional front, fighting for cities. The CCP melted into the countryside. They perfected guerrilla warfare, but Chiang moved his capital to Chongqing, which became a target for relentless bombing. The so-called Second United Front was a lie both sides told. While publicly allied against Japan, they were both secretly planning to destroy each other. The KMT was bleeding manpower and morale. The CCP was growing stronger in rural areas the Japanese couldn't control. The battle for hearts and minds. So here's what most people miss. We chalk this up to a difference in ideology, but it wasn't really so. The KMT represented hierarchy, Confucian order, and top-down rule, but they were also corrupt and ineffective. The CCP offered something just simpler: land reform, rent reduction, and protection from landlords. Thousands of peasants didn't join the communists because they read Marx, because they were ideologues, because they were communists. They joined whoever would protect them from starvation. And the CCP understood this. The KMT, to their own detriment, didn't. The Great Games end. In August 1945, like we all know, Japan surrendered, and both sides raced to occupy Manchuria. The Americans tried to broker peace. Ambassador Hurley and the Marshall Mission failed. Mao even visited Chiang in Chongqing for private meetings, but both men knew that these negotiations were theater. The real game changer was Soviet liberation of Manchuria. Suddenly, the CCP had access to captured Japanese arsenals. They had entire divisions worth of weapons and equipment. By 1949, it was over. Mao declared the People's Republic from Beijing on October 1st. Thus, Chiang fled to Taiwan with 2 million refugees and whatever gold reserves he could carry, with the dream of eventual return. So Taiwan under Japanese rule had developed infrastructure and order, and Chiang's arrival brought both modernization but also terror. The February 28th incident of 1947 allegedly saw KMT forces kill an estimated 18,000 to 28,000 Taiwanese civilians in brutal suppression of protests. Allegedly. Yet, simultaneously, Chiang implemented radical land reforms. He cut rents by 37.5% and redistributed some land to 70% of tenant households by 1953. It was authoritarian modernization. Some say brutal suppression, and some say economic transformation. Probably somewhere in the middle. Today's Taiwan reflects this complex legacy. The KMT still represents one China: law and order, economic modernization, and hierarchical tradition. Their flag symbolizes clarity, revolution, and anti-communist resistance. The DPP, however, emerged from Taiwanese identity and independence movements. They emphasize local democracy and reconciliation with February 28. They want to separate from Beijing's influence. Thus, they've systematically removed KMT statues and monuments. They're trying to erase the symbolic ties to authoritarian rule. So obviously, both parties are now democratic, but they diverge on the fundamental question: what is Taiwan? The KMT accepts ambiguous status quo with China, but the DPP leans towards formal independence. Here's the deeper truth. Both Mao and Chiang created myths of national rebirth through mass mobilization. Both made brutal calculations for political survival, Christian moral rectitude fused with Confucian order. He industrialized Taiwan while maintaining authoritarian control, and he never truly submitted to democratic politics until he was forced. The CCP represented revolutionary sacrifice, and it still legitimizes itself through Mao Zedong thought, which is official symbolism connecting present power to revolutionary heritage. Both leaders distrusted foreign influence. Chiang resisted Japanese colonialism and Western manipulation. Mao rejected imperialism and colonial humiliation. You could say they were just paranoid, but China has a historical memory. Realpolitik tools for understanding. Now we're going to do something different. I'm going to give you the analytical tools to understand this conflict and current geopolitics through 4 lenses. 1. Realpolitik. Decisions based on natural interests and survival, not moral ideas. Strategic empathy. Understanding what your adversary wants, believes, and fears. Game theory. Predicting choices based on rational self-interest. Propaganda analysis. Recognizing deliberate narrative framing. Let's apply these tools. Exercise 1. You are Chiang in 1945. Taiwan is your base. The CCP is rising in Manchuria with Soviet backing, and American support is uncertain. So, what are your strategic priorities? Think military, economic, diplomatic. What's your top priority? If you said stability over ideology, you understand realpolitik. Exercise 2. Strategic empathy. You're Mao in the late 1940s. What are your 3 greatest fears? Is it KMT beach landings, a Soviet betrayal, or CCP internal division? Understanding these fears explains his decisions better than any ideological analysis. Exercise 3. Game theory. 3 actors, PRC, Taiwan, and USA. Each has moves: invade and coerce, resist, versus maintain status quo, or intervene. Where do deterrence and miscalculations emerge? What would rational actors choose? So here's what most Western observers miss. Modern China and Taiwan aren't the ideological enemies they once were. Both arose from necessary authoritarianism during the crisis. Both are now functional states prioritizing order, national pride, and strategic resilience. Carl Schmitt wrote that sovereign decides in the state of exception during a crisis. Both the KMT and the CCP arose from extreme upheaval. Autocratic responses enabled transformation. Studies show 80 to 90% of Chinese citizens report satisfaction with the government, social justice, and freedom, even though they don't have a Western-style electoral democracy. Meanwhile, Western democracies struggle with foreign influence, identity factions, and oligarchic capture. Marx and Hegel understood something crucial: historical dialectic. Crisis creates resolution. Mao grasped that material conditions, class, and land determine revolutionary potential more than abstract ideals. What Mao, Stalin, and Chiang recognized: without strong central coordination, chaos prevails. They aptly predicted that liberal democracy without discipline leads to dissolution. Look at modern Western politics. Were they wrong? The global lesson. Consider this. Western states have engaged in more military interventions globally than China. The moral and monetary costs are staggering. While the West exports democracy through bombs, China is building infrastructure through investment. Young Chinese aren't uniformly patriotic, but many see stability and growth as evidence of legitimacy. A young Chinese nationalist, despite exposure with Western ideals, noted that his views remained unchanged. Why? Because to most people, ideology matters less than results. And by most people, we mean civilians, and most civilians are not that smart. Conclusion: beyond propaganda. So please, use these tools, realpolitik, strategic empathy, game theory, and propaganda analysis to see through the noise. Whether CCP, KMT, or Western liberal democracies, all operate with interest-driven constraints. The China-Taiwan conflict wasn't about cosmic ideology. It was profoundly human. It was material. It was a crisis. Competing visions of legitimacy and strategic necessity. Both societies shaped by that past are now more similar than different. Both are shaped by nationalism, pragmatism, and risk aversion. So what can we learn from this? Democracy grows organically from history, culture, and necessity, not through imposition or naturally forced transplantation. Our final challenge: power without empathy is brittle. Ideology without realism is empty. The Chinese experience challenges us to reconsider what democracy, governance, and national dignity actually mean. Their future lies not in imposed reunification or artificial separation, but in mutual recognition, cultural exchange, historical reconciliation, and shared prosperity. Both sides of the strait offer models based on tradition, trauma, and aspirational purpose. Perhaps the most important lesson is humility. Sovereignty and democracy must be linked with history and identity. Each society, Taiwan and mainland China, and yes, the West, must find its own path. Once you understand the real game, you can never go back to believing simple stories. And that's where your real wisdom will begin. So both China and Taiwan must pick their own path. But we have to understand their paths are parallel. They're not diverging in the way we think they are. They're not enemies in the way we think they are. They have a shared history, identity, and culture. That circumscribes every culture, every state, every civilization, every nation state in history. Thus, it's likely they will find some sort of resolution.